My name is Shanika Vidyadarshini Gamatiki. My index number is 48. In this video, I would like to describe about Visual Studio Code of REST API with the application. This is user controller JS. This code defines a user controller object with two methods, register and login. This is responsible for handling user registration and login functionalities respectively. Register method extract username, email, and password from the request body. It then executes a SQL insert query to insert the user's information into the user's table in the database. The DB query function is used to perform the database query. It takes a SQL query string, an array of query parameters, username, email, password, and a callback function as arguments. In the callback function, if an error occurs during the database operation, it is logged to the console and a 500 internal server error response is sent back to the client. If the operation is successful, a JSON response is sent back to the client with a success message. User registers successfully, and the ID of the newly inserted user result insert ID. The login method extracts email and password from the request body. It executes a SQL select query to retrieve the user's information from the user's table based on the provided email and password. Again, the DB query function is used to perform the database query. In the callback function, if an error occurs during the database operation, it is logged to the console and 500 internal server error response is sent back to the client. If no user is found matching the provided email and password, then 401 unauthorized response is sent back to the client with an error message. If a user is found, a JSON response is sent back to the client with success message, like login successful, and the user's information is given by the system. The user controller object containing the register and login method is exported, making it available for use in other parts of the application. These methods handle the user-related operations in the application interacting with the database to register new users and authenticate existing ones. Then, when I explain about db.js file, this code establishes a connection to MySQL database using the MySQL2 package and exports the database connection for use throughout the application. Then imports MySQL2 module, which is a MySQL client for Node.js. .env imports the .env module for loading environment variables from .env file. The DB constant is assigned the result of MySQL create connection, which creates a MySQL connection object. The connection object is configured with the host, user, password, and database name specified in the code. The actual values for these parameters are typically stored in environment variable to keep sensitive information out of the code base. The DB connect function is called to establish a connection to the MySQL database. If an error occurs during the connection attempt, it is logged to the console. The DB connection object is exported, making it available for using another parts of the application. This module encapsulates the database connection logic, allowing other parts of the application, such as controllers or services, to interact with the database without having to manage the connection details themselves. It's a common practice to separate concerns in Node.js applications, and this module follows that pattern by abstracting the database connection logic into its own file. When I explain about auth.js file, this code defines a middleware function called authenticate token for JWT authentication. JWT imports the JSON Web Token module, which is used for generating and verifying JWTs. Do.env imports the .env module for loading environment variables from a .env file. The authenticate token function takes three parameters: request, response, and next. It first checks if the request contains an authorization header. If not, it sends a status code of 401 as unauthorized. Then it extracts the token from the authorization header. If no token is found, it sends a status code of 401. It then verifies the extracted token using JWT verify. Passing the token, the JWT secret stored in the environment variable JWT secret, and a callback function. If the verification fails due to an error or an invalid token, it sends a status code of 403. If the token is successfully verified, it attaches the decoded use information to the request object and calls the next function to proceed to the next middleware in the stack. The authenticate token middleware function is exported, making it available for use in other parts of the application. This middleware is typically used to protect routes that require authentication. It ensures that only requests with a valid JWT in the authorization header can access protected resources. When I described about weather controller JS, this code defines a weather controller object with three methods: get all weather data, get weather data by district, and create weather data, responsible for handling good operations related to weather data. The weather control object containing these code methods for weather data is exported, making it available for use in other parts of the application. These methods handle the code operation related to weather data, allowing clients to retrieve all weather data, fetch weather data by district, and create new weather data entries in the database. When I talk about user.js file, this code defines a user class with static methods for interacting with the user's table in the database. GetByUsername method retrieves a user from the database by their username. It takes username as a parameter and a callback function to handle the results. It executes a SQL select query to fetch the user from the users table where the username matches the provided username parameter. The DB query function is used to perform the database query. In the callback function, if an error occurs during the database operation, it is logged to the console and the callback is invoked with the error and null as arguments. If the operation is successful, the callback is invoked with null as the error and the retrieved user as the result. The create method inserts a new user into the database. It takes user data and a callback function to handle the results. It executes a SQL insert query to insert the provided user data into the users table. The DB query function is used to perform the database query. In the callback function, if an error occurs during the database operation, is logged to the console and the callback is invoked with the error and null as arguments. If the operation is successful, the callback is invoked with the null as the error and the ID of the newly inserted user as the result. The user class is exported, making it available for use in other parts of the application. This class encapsulates database operations related to users, providing methods for retrieving users by username and creating new users. Additional methods for updating, deleting, or any other CRUD operation can be added as needed. This is weather.js code. This code defines a weather class with static methods for interacting with the weather data table in the database. This class encapsulates database operations, replaced weather data, providing methods for retrieving weather data, and creating new weather data entries. The use of promises allows for asynchronous handling of database queries, making the code more readable and maintainable. When we talk about user routes.js, this code defines routes for user-related operations using ExpressRouter. These routes define the endpoints for registering a new user and logging in. When a post request is made to register or log in, the corresponding method in the user controller is invoked to handle the request and response. This is weatherroutes.js. This code defines routes for weather-related operations using ExpressRouter. These routes define the API endpoint for fetching weather data. When a GET request is made to / or district, corresponding method in the weather control is invoked to handle the request and response. This is authService.js file. This code defines an auth service object with two methods for JWT, JSON Web Token authentication. It imports the JSON Web Token module for JWT functionality and the .env module for loading environment variable from a .env file. The generate token method generates a JWT token based on the provided user object. It takes a user object as input and uses JWT sign to create a token. The token contains the user object as its payload, and it is signed using the JWT secret stored in the environment variable JWT secret. The token expires in 1 hour. Authentication method is a middleware function for authenticating with JWT tokens. It extracts the token from the request authorization header. If no token is present, it sends a 401 unauthorized response. If a token is present, it verifies the token using JWT verify with the JWT secret. If the verification fails, it sends 403 forbidden response. If the token is valid, it attaches the decoded user information to the request object and calls the next function to proceed to the next middleware in the stack. The auth service object containing the generate token and authenticate token method is exported, making them available for use in other parts of the application. These methods are typically used for generating JWT tokens upon user authentication and for protecting routes that require authentication by verifying JWT tokens. This is weatherservice.js. This code defines a weather service object with methods for interacting with weather data through the weather module. This service acts as an intermediary between the controller and the module, providing an abstraction layer for handling weather-related operations. It encapsulates the logic for interacting with the weather module and handling any potential errors that may occur during database operations. This is data generator file. This code defines a data generator object with a method generate weather data responsible for generating simulated weather data generate method. This method is responsible for generating simulated weather data. However, the logic for generating the simulated weather data is not provided in the code snippet. This is Swagger.js. This code sets up Swagger documentation for your API using Swagger.js doc and Swagger UI Express and routes. This setup allows to generate and serve Swagger documentation for our application API, providing a convenient way for users to explore and interact with our endpoints. Now, when we talk about front end, this is app.js file. This React component is the main entry point of our application. Imports the React library necessary for creating React components. Imports the use effect hook from React used performing side effects in function components. Weather map imports the weather map component from weather map. Axios imports the Axios library for making HTTP requests. Then we talk about app component. This is a functional component named app. It uses the use effect hook to perform side effects. In this case, it fetches user data of the component mounts. Inside the use effect hook, it defines as asynchronous function fetch data to fetch user data from the API. It checks if a token exists in the local storage. If it does, it includes it in the authorization header for Axios request. It makes a GET request to HTTP server that added to fetch user data. This is if no token exists, it logs no token found. If an error occurs during the request, it logs the error. The use effect hook has an empty dependence array, so it runs only once after component mounts. The effect also includes a cleanup function to remove the authorization header when the component unmounts. Then a return statement, return JSX, or representing the UI of the component. It renders an H1 heading with the text Sri Lanka weather map. It renders the weather map component which presumably displays the weather map. Export, the app component is exported as the default export of the module, making it available for use in other parts of the application. Overall, this component set up the initial authentication flow by fetching user data using Axios with the stored token. It also renders the weather map component. This is weathermap.js file. This React component weathermap is responsible for rendering leaflet map with weather station markers and pop-ups. This component encapsulates the logic for fetching data of weather and displaying it on a leaflet map with markers and pop-ups. These are the districts we added. So it's all about the code. So now we can have a look in front end. So this is my front end with React. So when we click any district, this displays district name, temperature, humidity, and air pressure. When we click Candy, the temperature is 30.25 Celsius, humidity is 61%, air pressure is 1012 HPA. And this updates in every 5 minutes. My presentation is over. Thank you.